So we were talking about trying to bring forward some of the wisdoms which are shared by all mystical traditions, not just Tibet. Christian mysticism, Sufism, Advaita, and Buddhism. Also in a lot of African mystical things.
Traditions.
And there is this space where the deepest insights from mysticism become shamanic. Meaning, when we get to the most refined layers of experience, meaning pure awareness or pure emptiness, there's an increasing ability to penetrate the physical, to affect the physical. I don't know if any of you have ever contemplated or pondered how Jesus was able to do those miracles. What was really happening, what was in his energy that was behind the ability to heal, the ability to be a channel of healing. For example. And partly what we've been studying all of these years and what all of the different teachings are about is healing. Getting a deeper and more refined connection with this magic of healing. And healing is alchemy, in a way. And alchemy is transformation. And that's so important to understand, because transformation is not negation. It's not getting rid of something. It's quite the opposite movement. It's letting something take form in order to live, which itself is a perpetual transformation. And within that naturalness of transformation, when things are allowed to move, a certain pull towards harmony is happening, a pull towards symmetry, a pull towards better. What this translates to psychologically is a pull towards increasing contentment and happiness and peacefulness. Sense of being okay. And of course these qualities, when we touch them, like the sense of being okay, it's not that suddenly you became okay and you were redeemed because something was got rid of. The sense of being okay is that it was always okay. It's almost like a joke. Sometimes people just start laughing because they get the joke of all of their suffering, because it was always really okay. All these fears, all of these images, all of these experiences, all of this sense of being bad and getting it wrong and fighting and striving and struggling, it was always already okay. That's the okayness. So there's no getting rid of happening. It's more recruiting the magic of that pure permission, that pure okayness of everything that appears in our experience, which is tricky when it comes to the more painful stuff. And the sense of getting caught and stuck inside the more painful stuff. Which is another way to say contraction. In many ways, we wouldn't fear anything if we were not afraid of getting stuck in it. If we weren't afraid that it would possess us. So, on the first day we talked about the wisdom of service, which can be translated as the wisdom of compassion. How this is really deeply healing to ourselves, liberating our own psyche from its contractions. And obviously also to others as an effect. And sometimes moving with compassion towards others also helps liberate ourselves, because the compassion has to move through us to get to them. It's just outer perimeters of our experience. So inside the circle of our experience, there's us, our personality, and the other. So what we talked about with Monique yesterday is this tendency to bypass and go straight to the other, because something here is too horrible. So it's very important that this personality, which is myself, doesn't get left out. And the other, of course, is also a part of yourself. The other person, let's say it's a person, is a collection of impressions, images, effects, which has taken imaginative form and which you've given a name to as whoever. But it's existing, that form is only existing uniquely for you. It's not how they experience themselves. It's not how others experience them. You know, your experience, for example, of your partner and everything he is to you is entirely different from his mother's experience or her mother's experience of them. Totally different people. Or their ex-partner's experience of them. So there's a uniqueness. And it's not that this person is existing like in a sense that it's separate from the point of origin of them. But you have a unique expression of that person appearing within you at the meeting position of the two of you. This is why we work with impressions of other people's situations or diseases, meaning the feeling associated with, rather than with Joe Bloggs or Sally or whatever, whoever. So in the big world of the psyche, which is infinite actually in a way, everything we are aware of exists within us. Everything that we're conscious of is within our own psyche. So there are 4 forms which have been incorporated into a general compassion meditation. And maybe many of you know it, it's a mindfulness, a Buddhist meditation. You start with breathing in and breathing out and mindful breathing, and then you cultivate a sense like of really, really wishing well, this deep heartfelt sense to be of benefit for the well-being of the whole. And then you take these 4 entities. So the first one that you really, really wish well for is yourself. So you've got the picture now. You've got a field of infinite awareness, which is who you are. And within it is yourself, an entity, or you could almost call it a demon. And you connect with yourself, and you compassionately, you open the heart and really wish well for this entity which is yourself. The second one is somebody who's very intimately close to you, a beloved, your partner, a parent, a brother or a sister, a child. This is again, it gets more difficult. This is again a series of phenomena arising within your own psyche. And you really, really, really wish well for the beloved. Surprisingly difficult considering we think they're our beloved. Because there's quite an entanglement there already. This is the stuff that we push further away from the self. It's like here already. Then the next one is somebody who is quite neutral to you. Not this and not that, like the postman or the guy in the grocery store or the neighbour, but not the immediate neighbour. The neighbour in the other street.
The landlady.
And this feels like this should be harmless, right? To wish well for Mr. Anonymous.
Or Mrs. Anonymous.
So what is there is actually very, 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 very sneaky, because because it's anonymous and in a way formless, like who does the postman stand for? Who does he represent? Because he's not really a person anymore. It's somebody who doesn't matter this way or that, but he's witnessing, he's alive in you, or she is alive in you. You know, that person of no name that you pass in the street and that gives you a look. Like, what are they standing for? What's in that look? So, in many ways, this anonymous one, this indifferent one, is closely linked up with the whole social field, which is watching us all the time with subtle judgments, which we measure ourselves against sneakily. Are we a good girl? Are we a bad girl? Are we succeeding? Are we failing? Did we do it good? Did we not do it good? It's like these almost invisible eyes all the time on us. Within our psyche. So it's like a mirror here. We're given the authority of everybody. The world. And of course here there can be many areas of trauma when there's been a history, especially in the genes of lynch or being punished unfairly, witch hunts, being condemned socially, being shamed in public, being humiliated at school, being bullied. All of this is part of that anonymous, a supposedly easy one, and we are asked to wish them well. To really wish them well. The postman could be your father. And the fourth one, and this is where it becomes more relevant. And of course, the psyche is quite fluid, so we're moving from one to the other all the time. You know. So the fourth one is our enemy. So this would be the demon in a way, the demon in plain sight. This is where we demonify. But when I say it's fluid, it's like, you know, the beloved can become the enemy quite easily, and the border between who we think we are and the beloved gets confused often. And our self can become our enemy. And all of this is somehow played out in front of the audience of Joe Normal, of Mr. Anonymous, Mrs. Anonymous. So what we're speaking about is the subtle ways we kind of arrange reality within our own experience. Subtle organizations of our imagination. Using our imagination to organize, to categorize. And the reason that we're doing that is actually as a strategy to protect something. When people move into psychological instability, and they in a fearful way lose the sense of identity, they will often grab on to one of these and say, I am that one. Like they want to be somebody else, so they'll grab on to the beloved and try and be the beloved, or they'll grab on, sometimes they become the demon for a while, just because being somebody is better than being nobody. This fearful grasping towards. So, yeah.
Is that like measuring yourself up to someone you look up to, and then when you feel insecure, trying to be like them?
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, yeah. Which can be a positive thing. It's a kind of modelling, but when it's fear-based and fear-driven and evasive, we can be anybody we want to be. There's all the freedom. But what tends to happen when the sense of our own personality as an absolute stable form is threatened, we want to be anybody, doesn't matter who.
Yeah.
Or you want somebody else to be somebody, a big somebody. So then you've got a lot of this kind of idolatry movements, like guru worship, to invest the ultimate somebody in somebody else so that you can be nobody. but but a little bit of that happens, which is also a healing process, to give the somebodyness totally to somebody else, as a reflex because of the disappearance of the local personality. It's like somebody's got to be somebody. There has to be a form, because the fear of emptiness can be quite strong.
It's a transitional phase, I think.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And an important one. A worthwhile one. That's bhakti, in a way, the devotion. Of course, it's worthwhile when the teacher is able to contain it and doesn't begin to believe that he is some kind of demigod, which has happened in other situations. So, what we've been describing is that we're beginning to open up is what we talked about on the last day, which is the wisdom of emptiness, which is that everything that we think we are, or any way that we imagine ourselves into being, is imagination. It's fleeting impressions that rise in certain forms limited within time and space, and which dissolve back again. It's like thoughts are coming and going. Beliefs are not staying the same either. Feelings are coming and going. At least they're experienced more or less, or they're not experienced, against a backdrop of awareness, which is unfiltered in a way, doesn't have flavour in its purity. Physical sensations are coming and going. So, out of these coming and going impressions, which are all just arising in time and taking a certain space for a while and then disappearing again, having been there a while and then are not there anymore. All of these impressions, like a pain in the foot. It arises, it's there for a while, it expands, it's not stable, it changes shape. At a certain time it's disappeared and we're not even there, it's not there anymore. So what we do with our imagination, consciously or unconsciously, is we begin to represent, take all of these different impressions, often points of pain, because they can be the most shocking, and they move together to create, and out of this we create a form. We create an image of ourself. We do that through our minds. We create an image of who we are. And then we begin to depend on that and invest it with reality. We give it the appearance of stability. This is our stability. This is who I am, and this is full of the sense of stability. But we give that to it. So we get confused. We think this stability is in the image, not in the one that created it. We invest it with love. So we think the lover is the image. The source of the love is the image. Of the imagined self is the one that does the loving. Without really in a way, having forgotten that we're the source of the love, otherwise this image would have no love moving through it. We created this image. We filled it up with love. Or when love came towards us, we believed it was towards that image. That we created. When pain comes towards us, we believe it's towards that image that we create. Not towards the source of the God inside us, the creator inside us, the source of the image. So we have to then defend the image, build a few fortresses around it, tweak it, upgrade it now and again. Try and get it to be more invincible, more safe. Try and create an image which is free of pain, which can't be hurt, which is pure goodness with no evil in it, which is pure love with no hatred in it. But you need hatred because hatred is coming towards it, so you need some hatred around the outside just to protect the thing that's on the inside. But it's all imagined. And by degrees, our imagined self, our identity, becomes something which is increasingly fearful, self-pitying, judgmental, and very, very, very small and incompetent. We imagine ourselves to be useless, to be not able to cope with life. We secretly imagine ourselves to be evil because this image is also getting created by the people around us, and we believe in that. By that Joe Normal, that and Mr. Anonymous, he gave us that sense of evil. So the image has also a shadow attached to it. The wisdom of emptiness gives us the possibility to realize that all of this is our imagination. That this idea of who we think we are as a limited form in time and space, as someone who can't do it, isn't able, somebody that fails, somebody that doesn't have any strength, it gives us the ability to realize that this is not who we are. Those are just impressions arising based on old patterns, innocent patterns of cause and effect. That it's pure enough because it is what it is and it's changing all the time, but it's not who we are. This imagination of who we are. We're the one that's able to imagine. We're the source of that creativity. So when we believe that this personality is who we are, what we're investing in it is an absolute status. It becomes in a way like a god. So to attack it is to attack the god inside. And within it, for example, there's fear, there's patterns of fear. So fear shows up and then fear becomes the god. Pain shows up and pain becomes the god. And why does it become a god? Because everything that's showing up strongly in the field of impressions, which is the personality, is saying that this is who I am. This is the truth. This small, tiny, limited, conditioned creation of ourselves is the creator. It's the truth. So what we get is a situation where, in the process of living, we go into the world and love is moving through us, and we get disappointed and betrayed in love. And so what the personality does is it keeps the disappointment and the betrayal, and it negates the love. The love is imagination. It flips it around. Love is the fantasy. This disappointment, this betrayal, that's the reality. That's the bottom line, that's the truth. So we move in our naturalness in togetherness, and then we find that we are suddenly in a whole conflict. So again, togetherness, interdependency, the mutual supportive nature of the universe, that gets thrown out. But we keep the conflict. Conflict is the bottom line. I have to be alone. There's no togetherness. In the end, it's got to be alone. Togetherness, fantasy. You see the cynical movement, which takes the quality of imagination, throws it back at the source of itself, and says the source is imagined. Yeah, all of these new ages, imagining stuff, like love and peace. Imagining peace, everybody knows that this is only war here. War is absolute. Yeah. And it gets more subtle. Let's all imagine peace together. That will make us good people. Let's run like rabbits trying to get the peace which will be there tomorrow if we work very, 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 very hard and compromise everything. We start to play games creatively with the qualities as if that were the playing field. You see the twisted loop? So we're alive and we're full of joy and all of this, and then somebody very close to us dies. So we keep the death close. And we chuck out the life. Life's not really to be trusted at all. Death is the bottom line. And of course we can go through all the contractions and all the qualities and by the same formula to show the average person. That's Joe Normal. It's grief, combinations of grief, loss, dissatisfaction, discontent, sadness. The sense of never enough, lack, lots of lack in the personality because it doesn't actually know where its power source is coming from, but it doesn't want to admit that it isn't the power source of itself. But that's really complex for it. So, in a way, this is how demons are created. This is what we're working with in the afternoons. But what we're doing in the afternoon to make a difference is we're taking full responsibility for our imagination. And for some of us what showed up was that although we were able to easily imagine a demon, it was much, much harder to imagine an angel. Who are we? We can't. We can't do that. We're this small, limited thing. So there's many layers where this exercise is working at once in the realization of the imagination. In tantric practice, and tantric isn't really about fucking at all, it's about experiencing. It's about the way of experience rather than the way of knowledge, fundamentally. Buddhism, like every other religion, has a split between the way of knowledge and the way of direct experience, and which has birthed the wisdom in itself of the magic of the synergy of the two when head and heart dance together. So every religion has this split, Judaism included, between the Hasidic movement and the knowledge-based Mitnaged movement. So in the tantric movement, the imagination is actively used to imagine yourself as a goddess, or a god, or a messiah, or a positive feature. And so this is a bit what Marika was asking, and this is what's behind modelling. So in NLP, it's really worthwhile to model yourself on somebody that you really, really admire. This has a benefit, because it breaks open that limited imagined form of who we thought we were. It's not that we necessarily believe that we became Jesus, but we got free of the idea that we were Yanni as an absolute. Do you see the magic of it?
Mm-hmm.
And we share then the experience of, so there's out of emptiness where no form is absolute, this blending possibility is there. So it's not just like, hey, let's pretend I'm God. You can really experience a certain godliness and relax into that. You can experience whatever represents to us fearlessness as an exercise of the imagination and relax into that full embodied experience. How would that be? You can take somebody that we admire, say Eckhart Tolle, who is an incredible channel of stillness, and imagine how would that be to be him. And suddenly we find we're accessing stillness, which is not Eckhart's, not ours, but it's so much at the source. And maybe the most important thing is we get free of this idea that we are this limited little miserable somebody that needs to defend itself. So the invitation, all of this work, is to kind of recognize that we are all angels in sheep's clothing. Or at least to allow that possibility, to imagine it. You know, we've imagined our whole lives that we were a piece of incompetent shit, so why not for an afternoon imagine that you're an angel? This is the deeper realization of the imagination, because in this we can then play. In this, this deep wish to be of service actually takes on a whole new possibility. You know, the small idea of who we are can only give little drops of compassion out, and then it runs out. That imagination is always based on lack, on a lack of supply, a lack of affirmation, a lack of consciousness, a limited supply of love, a lack of life, lack of joy, lack of affirmation. There's so much lack in it, it's practically starving. And when we can imagine the absence of lack, meaning just imagine that everything that is infinite in its supply, then it's not that we take away this kind of, like Harriet called the hollow woman. It's not like she's taken away, but we can first of all allow that infinite supply to move towards this form. And this form by itself, because of the basic nature of compassion, will then share it with others. So when we talk about moving beyond the personality, we're not talking about negating it, we're talking about feeding it. We're talking about self-compassion, asking it, what does it really need? How will it feel when it gets what it needs? Now, it really is a rat race, this striving to be somebody. You know, even the greatest ego in the world, the one who's the most wonderful, I don't know, John Travolta, whoever, whoever is our icon, even that one,
Trump.
even Trump, huge, president of the world, wisdom moving through him in some kind of blind...
A lot of imagination.
There's an intelligence moving through him, which is the intelligence of karma, which is incredibly confrontational to us left-wing New Agers living in America. It's bringing up all of our shadows.
Mm.
It's polarizing the gender, like the genders, the male and the female, like crazy, which is almost to the point of violence, which is for people who thought they were peace-loving, kind, good people. So everybody is shaken up by this acceleration in karma, of which Trump is an expression, in a way. But his ego, president of the world, huge, successful at everything, multi-millionaire, all of this is tiny. If that's who he believes he is, you put it in perspective of the source of the universe, which is who he really is. Just like it's all who we really are. The source of consciousness itself. Then he's a sucker. He's a loser. He thinks he's just only the president of the world. He's a hollow man. At least he believes he is. He suffers in that belief. And it's never enough. Believe me, for Trump, it's never enough. The sense of lack is pulling and pulling and pulling. The bigger we think we are in that limited sense of self, the greater the sense of lack.
Can I ask, what's kind of the difference between the image and, or is it the image if you just sit and something comes up? Is it image? Is it created in the mind, or is it coming from somewhere else? I'm just not sure what it.
So where is it coming from? Any image that arises?
But it's not an image. It's always doing this, coming from the ground in there.
Yeah.
Not so imaging in, like imaging a flower or something.
So the direct experience of being alive as you is what you're talking about. Yeah. So the more we're able to realize that we are this emptiness, this continuous, indestructible inner core prior to consciousness, out of which consciousness itself arises, and awareness, and the more we can rest back in that dark but also light in a way, source of who we are, that sense of self which has always been there, the timeless one, the formless one, the less we need to grab on to the images of our imagination and say this is who I am and this is who I'm not, because there's always a shadow, isn't there? There's who I am and there's the imagined who I'm not, who I will never be. So, and the less we need to grab onto our imagination, the more we're able to move into the direct experience of being alive without doing anything with it. So these are impressions and feeling impressions and physical impressions which are happening, which normally are the source of the imagination. If we can stay with them, just in the body, experiencing whatever the body is doing by itself as a living thing, we're already realizing the imagination as not our God.
Not what?
Not God. We're moving into direct experience then, which means direct seeing, direct sensing, direct experience of resistance or of releasing, or the direct experience of the body processing stuff in that infinite space of who we are. And the more we can rest back in that infinite space without grasping it or pushing it away, the more it's able to do what it needs to do. The body, the field of experience. Right?
I think, yeah, there's some struggle that I think that's the imagine, that I imagine that.
Yeah. So maybe you do. Maybe there's a secondary effect because everything is reflected in the mind like a mirror. And that's the basic imagination. The mind by itself is, consciousness before we imagined anything at all, and before we opened our eyes, is just this clear light. It's really this kind of bright gold light, in a way, the backdrop of the mind. Of the mind, not of it, not of the source. So, in a way, Ram Dass talks about it as being like a mirror. So whatever's happening here is immediately reflected there. The direct seeing, the direct insight is when we don't bother so much about the reflections, but move into the direct seeing through our fingers, through our heart, through the body. This kind of direct seeing which has no longer got anything to do with eyes, but where all the senses are coming together through the physical. And of course that requires again the wisdom of emptiness, to be able to relax in not being anything in particular at all, not being caught in time and space at source, which means there's no reason to be afraid, or there's no reason to reject anything. Part of what was happening yesterday is that there was, for some of us, an attempt to resist resistance, for example. So much wanting to do it well that there was a resistance to resistance. So the resistance to resistance builds more resistance, because if resistance is not allowed, resistance becomes the authority. And the perception out of emptiness is actually that, resistance is happening. Wow, that's curious, but it's got absolutely no authority at all over who you are. It's just another happening, like the demon appearing, or like bliss, and it's all got an equality to it in a way. Fear, there's some fear. It doesn't have the authority. The creative authority. And of course, when we take that risk of being brave enough to just fall back behind the personality and not believe in it too much, our direct sense of who we are, it becomes a playing field. We can play, it's fun. And that playfulness is also beginning to come forward from yesterday. There is it's a bit of a theatre of fools. But within that freedom and playfulness is a lot of healing potential. When Newton started talking alchemy, he was playing around, but the judgment against him, that he'd lost his mind. But he didn't lose his mind. He was seriously considering this as a philosopher.